Most men never realize there's a difference between being loved and being measured until the relationship is already slipping away. They assume affection means unconditional safety, that once a woman chooses them, the choice is permanent unless something extreme happens. Meanwhile, something very different is going on in her mind. She isn't just feeling you, she's quietly tracking you whether she intends to or not. Women rarely announce disappointment at the beginning. They don't file a formal complaint when the first cracks appear. They watch, they adapt. They see how you respond to stress, to temptation, to boredom, to challenge. By the time she finally verbalizes, "I'm not happy," she's often already reached a conclusion long before the words left her mouth. That's why so many men experience breakups as if they came out of nowhere. What I'm going to unpack is a series of hard realities about women and modern relationships that explain those blindsiding moments. Not theories, not internet trends, but repeated patterns. The way attraction rises and falls. How respect is gained and lost. Why some women stay long after they're checked out. And why they can move on so quickly when it's over. This isn't meant to make you paranoid or bitter. It's meant to make you precise, because the man who understands how he's being assessed doesn't crumble when the mood changes. He doesn't cling harder or start pleading when warmth turns lukewarm. He notices the shift early enough to adjust his path or walk away with his self-respect intact. Awareness always comes before control. You cannot influence a process you refuse to see. One of the core realities you need to grasp is that for many women, attraction isn't a one-time achievement. It's an ongoing review. Think of it less like a trophy you win for being a decent guy and more like a constantly updated dashboard. She might deeply care for you and still, without intending to, keep scanning your life for signals. Are you advancing or stalling? Leading or coasting? Growing or shrinking? This internal scoreboard isn't necessarily manipulative. In most cases, she's not sitting there calculating like an accountant. It's more like a background app running in her nervous system. Your attitude, ambition, emotional steadiness, how other people respond to you, how you deal with setbacks and conflict, these feed into a quiet, recurring question. Is this the man I can trust my future to? When your trajectory is strong, you can feel it even if she never says a word. She's affectionate, drawn to you, proud to stand next to you. She talks about you in a positive light when you're not around. She gives not out of obligation, but because being with you feels like a net gain. Your presence amplifies her life instead of just filling space in it. When that internal score begins to dip, the change is almost always subtle at first. Less excitement, more small complaints. The quirks she once shrugged off now irritate her. You didn't become a different man overnight. What shifted is how she reads your direction. Maybe you lost your edge, your drive, your leadership. Maybe you started coasting. She noticed the slide before you did. The key is to understand that attraction isn't something you store in a vault. It's affected by how you live every day. That doesn't mean living in fear of making mistakes. It means recognizing that your habits, discipline, and mindset compound. Strength compounds, drift compounds. By the time her dissatisfaction turns into words, the trend has already been in motion for a while. One of the most disorienting experiences a man can have is realizing that the woman beside him has been living in a different emotional reality than he thought. From his point of view, things felt fine. No constant arguing, no major explosions, nothing that screamed emergency. Then, seemingly out of nowhere, she sits him down and says she's unhappy, confused, disconnected, or done. He feels ambushed. The reason this happens so often is simple. Men tend to take problems seriously once they're spoken. Women tend to communicate problems long before they use sentences. For many women, dissatisfaction leaks out through behavior first. Words are the final stage, not the first signal. If you're only tuned into what she says, you'll miss what she's already been showing you. It usually starts with small deviations. She's a little less affectionate than she used to be. Her enthusiasm for seeing you drops just a notch. Her tone becomes cooler or more easily irritated. The physical intimacy that once flowed naturally starts to feel like effort. She invests a little less of her emotional energy into you and more into work, friends, or distractions. Individually, each change seems minor. Together, they are a report. Most men explain these shifts away. She's stressed, she's tired, she's busy. Maybe it's just a phase. Because she hasn't delivered a direct complaint, he assumes there's no real threat. He keeps running the same playbook, thinking everything is basically fine. Meanwhile, she's quietly collecting data, deciding whether the situation can be salvaged or whether she's simply easing herself out. There is a crucial threshold most men don't see. Before that line is crossed, sincere behavioral change can still move the needle. If you catch the pattern early and step back into your power, direction, and presence, the dynamic can restabilize. After that point, though, her respect has eroded so much that new effort doesn't land the same way. It feels forced to her, too little and too late, no matter how genuine you think it is. By the time she finally articulates, "I don't feel the same," that threshold has often already passed. From your side, it sounds like the beginning of a conversation. From hers, it's more like closing arguments before a verdict. Men misinterpret this moment and start trying to talk their way back into attraction. They explain, they justify, they make promises, they pledge future effort in exchange for another chance. But attraction doesn't respond to retroactive negotiation. Once respect has sunk below a certain level, explanations don't rebuild it. Logical arguments don't reignite desire. What you consistently showed over months or years has more weight than what you suddenly swear you'll do now. This isn't cruelty, it's how human attraction works. Feelings follow perceived value and direction, not emergency speeches. The lesson isn't to live on edge or obsess over every mood swing. It's to take behavior seriously, even when words are quiet. If her engagement, warmth, and investment decrease over time, that is a message. Ignoring that and waiting for a dramatic confession means you'll always be responding when it's already late, instead of leading while there's still time to shift the story. Another pattern men struggle to accept is that some women don't fully step out of a relationship until they feel there's a safe place to land. Many men, once they commit, close every other door. They see loyalty as binary. You're either in or out, clear-cut. But not everyone operates with that same internal rulebook, especially in a culture where security feels scarce. A backup plan rarely looks like blatant cheating. It's usually subtle and technically defensible. An old friend she never quite let go of. A guy from work she gets along with really well. Someone at the gym who's always conveniently in her messages. No explicit flirtation you can point to. No physical line obviously crossed. On the surface, it's all harmless contact. The real function of these connections isn't romance. It's insurance. When a woman's faith in the long-term viability of her current relationship declines, many won't confront it directly. Open confrontation feels risky. It might lead to a breakup, and a breakup might lead to loneliness, financial strain, or social judgment. So instead of facing that fear head on, she quietly keeps certain options half warm. In her mind, as long as nothing physical happens, she's still loyal. She frames it as friendship, networking, casual conversation. When you question it, you're often made to feel like you're the problem. insecure, controlling, paranoid. Because you don't want to fit that stereotype, you override your instincts. You tell yourself you're being dramatic. You stop asking questions. From your side, though, something doesn't feel right. Her phone becomes more private. There are names you keep hearing less about, even though they haven't disappeared. Male friends who obviously show interest are brushed off as just like brothers. Former partners remain in the orbit for vague reasons that never fully make sense. None of it is conclusive, but the overall pattern signals divided focus. This doesn't mean every woman with male friends is planning an exit. It does mean you should pay attention to how she handles boundaries and loyalty when things get difficult. For some, safety comes not from deepening commitment to the man she chose, but from maintaining alternative doors in case this one feels too risky or disappointing. Most men discover the existence of that next guy only after the breakup. She moves on with surprising speed. To you, it feels impossibly fast. To her, it's merely a transition she prepared quietly over time. Emotional energy had already been shifting away from you long before the official ending. The solution isn't turning into a jealous interrogator or policing her every interaction. That only proves you don't trust your own value. The real answer is to become the kind of man for whom redundancy feels unnecessary. A man whose direction, character, and capability make him clearly the best option in the room. When you're that man, backup plans tend to fade on their own, not because you demanded loyalty with threats, but because keeping extra doors open would feel like a downgrade she doesn't want. In previous generations, relationships were generally understood as long-term alliances. Two people brought different strengths, compromised, sacrificed, and tried to build something larger than themselves. Family, stability, legacy. It wasn't perfect, but the lens was partnership. Today, that frame has been heavily disrupted, and what often replaces it is far more transactional than most men realize. In many modern dynamics, the unspoken question has shifted from, what can we create together, to, what can I get out of this right now? The relationship is less a shared project and more a personal upgrade package. Lifestyle, comfort, experiences, social standing, entertainment. These become the criteria by which you're silently judged. If the perceived benefits are high, affection flows. If they dip, so does interest. Social media supercharges this mindset. Every scroll presents glamorous couples on trips, in luxury restaurants, living filtered lives. Even ordinary people absorb the idea that this level of ease and excitement is standard, and anything less feels like settling. A man then is often evaluated not just as a partner, but as a provider of a certain experience. Many men enter relationships believing they're building a life side by side. They see their effort, working long hours, planning, protecting, as investment into a shared future. Meanwhile, some women are measuring whether his effort is producing the standard of living and social image they've been conditioned to expect. When the results impress, she's present and affectionate. When they falter, admiration quietly erodes. You see signs of this transactional frame when her warmth is strongly tied to what you're delivering. Affection peaks around wins, status boosts, and material upgrades, then drops sharply when you hit a rough patch. She loves the dinners, trips, and attention, but rarely reciprocates with sacrifices of her own time, comfort, or money. She consumes more than she contributes. Your challenges are met with impatience instead of support. The painful part is that many men don't realize they're in a deal until the terms change. A job loss, a business setback, a health issue. Suddenly the enthusiasm dries up. What he thought was a bond reveals itself as an arrangement. She didn't sign up for the struggle, only the reward phase. So when the reward shrinks, she quietly begins looking elsewhere. What makes this especially brutal is that from the outside, it still looks like a normal breakup. The legal and financial consequences are the same whether the love was pure or conditional. You may find yourself not only heartbroken, but also paying a long-term price for a relationship that, in retrospect, was never truly mutual. This isn't about demonizing women. Plenty of men also treat relationships as transactions. The point is to see clearly what's actually happening instead of projecting your own intentions onto someone who doesn't share them. Watch who adjusts when life demands it. Notice who supports you when you're not winning. If she only shows up fully when things are glamorous and easy, you're not co-building, you're sponsoring. A man who understands this doesn't avoid commitment. He simply becomes far more deliberate about where he invests his time, resources, and heart. A lot of men are fooled by how confident many women appear on the surface. She's outspoken, stylish, assertive, clear about her standards. She talks about what she won't tolerate, sets timelines, pushes for decisions. It's easy to assume that kind of presence comes from deep inner security. You see the posture and mistake it for peace. Underneath, however, many women carry a pressure most men never fully understand. From girlhood onward, they're bombarded with a message. Your value is closely tied to attractiveness and youth. Compliments, attention, and opportunities often arrive first for how they look, long before their deeper qualities are recognized. Along with that attention comes a shadow warning. This particular currency fades. In the age of constant online comparison, that pressure is relentless. There's always someone younger, fitter, more glamorous, getting more likes and validation. Every birthday can feel like slipping a little further from a peak they were told they must maintain. Even women who seem put together are usually very aware of where they stand in that silent competition. That awareness shapes behavior in ways men misinterpret. The sudden push for clarity. What are we doing? Where is this headed? I need to know you're serious can look purely like strong boundaries. In reality, it's often fueled by the fear of wasting time. Phrases like, "I'm not getting any younger," aren't jokes. They're pressure valves releasing anxiety. The clock isn't just about fertility, it's about options and leverage. As certain ages approach, the urgency rises. The fear is not simply being single, it's the prospect of having far fewer choices and having to settle later for what they could have passed on earlier. That's why some women try to accelerate commitment faster than the relationship has actually matured. They want security in place before they feel their perceived bargaining power drops. This is also why hesitation from a man can feel so threatening. When you say, "I'm not ready for that step yet," she doesn't just hear your words. She hears the ticking of her internal countdown. She may escalate, issue ultimatums, or frame your caution as a moral failing. You're afraid of commitment. You're wasting her time. You're playing games. Recognize what's really happening. Ultimatums are seldom about pure principle. They're about fear. And choices made under fear rarely lead to the best outcomes. Rushing into marriage or kids to calm someone's anxiety about age might bring short-term peace, but it can create long-term misalignment, resentment, and regret on both sides. Your job as a man is not to mock or dismiss this pressure. It's real for many women. Your job is also not to surrender your standards or pace just to ease that discomfort. If you abandon your discernment to avoid being seen as non-committal, you're building a life on someone else's panic, not on shared clarity. Listen to her concerns, but ground your decisions in whether the relationship is truly healthy and aligned, not in how loudly the clock is ticking in her head. Most men equate stability with safety. The bills are paid, routines are smooth, there's no shouting or chaos. From a masculine perspective, that feels like success. You've built a calm life. But in many cases, that calm slowly morphs into emotional flatline. And flatline is where attraction starts to die. Women aren't inherently addicted to drama, but they are wired to respond to emotional movement, challenge, growth, anticipation, the sense that something is evolving. When life with you becomes entirely predictable, not peaceful but stagnant, desire quietly erodes. Stability without momentum feels like being stuck in neutral. A man who once felt exciting can start to feel like background noise. This is why you sometimes see good, dependable men get left, while obviously chaotic men still attract attention. The dependable guy is solid but static. He doesn't push himself, doesn't expand, doesn't pursue anything beyond basic comfort. Over time, she stops feeling polarized by him. He's safe, but not compelling. She may start complaining more, picking fights, or saying something is missing without knowing how to define it. The missing piece is often your growth. If you're no longer stretching yourself, setting new standards, or pursuing something bigger than the relationship, you blend into the furniture. You're there, but you're not leading. And when she can accurately predict every move you'll make, there's no tension or mystery left to feed attraction. Modern culture amplifies this restlessness. Friends and influencers repeat narratives about settling and deserving more. Social feeds showcase people constantly upgrading their lives and partners. A comfortable, low-drama existence starts to look like evidence that she chose wrong instead of evidence that you built something solid. There's another layer that confuses men even more. You never completely leave a woman's evaluation system, even after the breakup. Months or years later, when you've finally moved on, you might get a random message. "Hey, how have you been?" Or "Saw something that reminded me of you." Many men interpret this as nostalgia or regret. Often, it's a status check. She wants to know how your life unfolded without her. If you're struggling, lost, or clearly downgraded, it confirms in her mind that leaving was the right call. If you've leveled up, physically, financially, emotionally, her reaction will be very different. Discomfort, curiosity, sometimes a renewed pull. Not because she suddenly understands your worth on a deeper level, but because your increased value reactivates something primal in her attraction system. Your best response in those moments is restraint. You don't owe an emotional debrief. You don't need to provide her with validation that her past choices were wise or foolish. Polite distance or silence protects your dignity and keeps your focus where it belongs. Forward. The larger point is this: the game doesn't end because a relationship ended, and it doesn't pause because one began. You are always in some way being observed by current partners, former partners, and most importantly, by yourself. The antidote to boredom, disrespect, and becoming a fallback is the same: continuous growth. A man who keeps moving, learning, and strengthening doesn't need to chase, beg, or reintroduce himself. His life speaks on his behalf. You've now seen a set of patterns most men only understand after they've been burned. Not so you can hate women, but so you can stop being blind. When you grasp how evaluation, backup plans, transactions, fear, and boredom operate, you stop taking every outcome personally and start taking responsibility for who you are and how you move. Awareness won't make you cynical. It will make you harder to misuse and far more powerful in choosing where and with whom you build your life.